The stillness of the dawn was broken by the sound of turtle doves as the camp at Geriep was still asleep. The sun slowly peeked over the hills, the Geriep Dam started to glow, and I was glad that we had already put 800 kilometers behind us. Soon everyone in our party had surfaced and getting ready for the day. Some discussed and planned, others ate, but soon everyone was hitched and ready to go. En route to Cape Town, we pressed on towards the Karoo National Park, our next destination just outside Beaufort West. We travelled along the Karoo National Highway, absorbing some of the scenery of this vast, unforgiving landscape known as the Karoo, South Africa's premier sheep country.
When we left Durban, it was pouring with rain, and here we are now at the Karoo National Park, some 1,200 kilometers away from home, and it's in the sweltering Karoo heat. Good afternoon. Hi, we checked in.
Okay, sir. And how are you, sir?
Very well, and yourself?
Not too bad, sir.
Good.
Okay, sir.
How far is the camp from here?
From here, about 6 kilometers, sir, in the Start Road.
We travelled past the chalets, beautifully set against the backdrop of the Nieuweveld Mountains, to the lush green caravan park. Not quite what we had expected in such a dry region. After pushing and shoving and making some minor adjustments to our site, we set up camp. The Karoo National Park is dominated by the Nieuweveld Mountains and rolling plains, and is home to a wide diversity of wildlife and succulent plants, all adapted to survive in these harsh conditions. We started to explore the park with the fossil trail, which displays fossilized remains of creatures that lived in this region millions of years ago. The hairpin bends of the Nieuweveld mountain pass took us to the rocky terrain on the plateau, where we saw a number of red hartebeest grazing in the veld. We also came across a lonely springbok or two. From the plateau we descended down into the valley, where we came across a mountain zebra. The difference between these zebras and the Burchell zebras are the distinct broader markings, especially on the hind quarters. We also took the opportunity of checking out our feathered friends.
This is a bird hide, so we're trying to be quiet. But there's not much action. It's very pretty though, but there's not much bird action. We stick around a little bit longer, see what happens.
And sure enough, we were visited by a nest-building weaver and a couple of swallows. Back in camp, the kids got all excited about a tortoise that just happened to drop in for a visit. Ronnie had just received a cob cooker as a Christmas gift and was enjoying trying it out for the first time. And after that good hearty meal, it was time to settle down for the evening. The next day we moved on to Maatjiesfontein, an historical village some 30 kilometers south of Laingsburg. As we drove into Maatjiesfontein, the luxurious Rovers Rail briefly pulled into the station.
Maatjiesfontein is definitely one of my favorite historical towns in South Africa. Not so much for the history, but the coffee shop here has the best scones I have ever tasted. Since the last time I was here, these scones have shrunk a little bit, but they look good in any case.
After our treat, we popped into the old post office, which is now a souvenir shop. Of course, Wilma just couldn't resist indulging in some Maatjiesfontein vintage wine. Once again, we headed towards Cape Town, through the impressive Huguenot Tunnel between Worcester and Paarl. Coming out of the tunnel, the Paarl Valley stretched ahead of us. As Ronnie grew up in Paarl, the town is of sentimental value to him. Even a street was named after an uncle of his.
Perel. This is his street.
We bypassed Cape Town, finally arriving in Kommetjie, some 35 kilometers south of Cape Town on the peninsula. Here we set up camp for the next 5 days. After relaxing a while, we took a walk to the picturesque beach with its bright white sand and spectacular views of Hout Bay and Chapman's Peak. The setting sun added its touch of charm and warmth to an already beautiful setting. The next day we travelled south towards Cape Point, stopping periodically to admire the view. At times we needed to make sure that we were going in the right direction. Then just outside Scarborough we came across a fascinating sight.
Gee, how's this place? It must be the biggest curio shop I've ever seen. How's our Jumbo here? He's almost life-size. I'm going to put him in my garden.
A family of artists make these wonderful sculptures which are shipped all over the world. The Cape Peninsula National Park is a place of sea, mountains, indigenous fauna and flora, and a lot of climbing if one wants to reach the actual point.
Last warm-up for tomorrow.
The walk up here is quite treacherous, but the view is unbelievable.
This is one place on the African continent that you may not literally see the meeting of the two oceans, but it certainly gives you the end of the continent feeling. From Cape Point, we travelled along the eastern side of the peninsula, stopping briefly at Baldur's Bay to meet the penguins. Then we passed through the historical naval village of Simonstown, where Just Nuisance, the only dog ever to receive rank in the naval forces, still stands guard over the naval base. From Simonstown we moved on to the Kirstenbosch National Botanical Gardens. Kirstenbosch is the largest of a countrywide network of 8 botanical gardens. This world-famous garden is situated on the eastern slopes of Table Mountain, covering 528 hectares and includes a cultivated garden and nature reserve.
Gosh, so nice.
See the resemblance?
The Kirstenbosch Centre has a huge shop with a large variety of wonderful goodies to take home. Crossing over onto the western side of Constantia Kloof, we came to Hout Bay, South Africa's very first waterfront. This is a picture-perfect town situated at the start of Chapman's Peak. Hout Bay is known for its fresh snook, and it was certainly worth queuing for. The Hout Bay beach is a great place for families and friends to hang out and just relax. Strolling along the quayside, we saw the working harbour in action. Fresh fish can sometimes be bought straight off some of these fishing boats. From Hout Bay we took a drive through Camps Bay along Victoria Road to Clifton, where we spent an hour or so taking in the scenery and enjoying the sun and the fine white sands of Clifton Beach. But that was about as much as we could take for one day before returning to camp. The next day we were up bright and early to tackle Table Mountain. Now, there are two ways to get to the top of Table Mountain. Ronnie did it the hard way, walking the 1,085 meters up Table Mountain in a mere 1 hour and 45 minutes. Wilma, Madeleine and I decided to rather take in the mechanical way up. The new cableway holds 65 people and the base rotates, giving everyone the opportunity of a 360-degree view. Of course, need I say more, once on the summit one can only savor the spectacular views from the top of the world's most striking natural wonder. All in all, we had a wonderful afternoon, enjoying the pleasures and the views from the world's most famous mountain. Thereafter, Madeleine and Kelly decided to visit Groot Constantia, an estate that once belonged to Simon van der Stel, whilst Wilma and I and the Perraults opted to visit the beautiful university town of Stellenbosch, with its impressive streets lined with lush green oak trees and historical Cape Dutch buildings. After a while, the aroma of brewing coffee and scones from one of the many sidewalk cafes got the better of us. Wilma, of course, could not resist a bobotie. Whilst in Stellenbosch, Wilma and I decided to visit Speer in the region and one of the 3 founder members of the Stellenbosch wine route. Speer is primarily a wine cellar offering a variety of excellent wines. They are also really geared up for tourists, with numerous restaurants where one can indulge in their good foods and good wines, beautiful lawns beside the lake where one can enjoy a picnic, and a lot of stalls selling local arts and crafts. Also very popular amongst tourists is the Cheetah Outreach Center, where one has the opportunity of interacting with the cheetahs. From the peace and tranquility of Stellenbosch, we went to Retender Junction, where screams and hysteria is all part of having a good time. After all that high-tension excitement, we really needed to unwind, and a visit to Green Market Square, a colourful flea market where anything goes, was literally a walk in the park by comparison. Just down the road from Green Market Square, we popped into the historical castle where changing of the guards was taking place. Finally, we got down to the ever-popular Victoria and Albert waterfront, set against the backdrop of the majestical Table Mountain. We spent the rest of the afternoon here, enjoying all it has to offer. As the sun set behind Table Mountain, we decided to call it a day and went back to camp, where we were entertained by a band of Cape Malay buskers. Although we had a great time in Cape Town, I was happy to leave the hectic city life behind and head back into the country. We decided to travel to Oudtshoorn along Route 62 via Kochmans Kloof, where we stopped briefly alongside the road just to make sure that we were on the right track. Although the landscape seemed rather barren at times, Route 62 is the longest wine route in the world, and all those who have travelled it agree that there are few places as stunningly beautiful. Then suddenly, in the middle of nowhere between Berrydale and Ladysmith, we came across this very unusual landmark.
Now this is not quite what it seems. Let's go and see if somebody can tell us what the story behind this name is.
This was old labour's cottage. So Ronnie, top left on the door, was all his fault. Well, he wanted to open like a little farm stall, you know, selling veggies and fruits like this. So it stayed, he went and he wrote the name Ronnie's shop, only Ronnie's shop. So it stayed like that for about almost 3 years with his name Ronnie's shop, nothing going on, Bergenhout building. Behind you still photographs where it looked before. So after those 3 years, some of his friends decided they're going to pull a joke on him. So they came out, added the sex, became Ronnie's Sex Shop. Stayed another 3 years with the name Ronnie's Sex Shop. That's where all the past going trade, you know, they started taking photographs, writing articles. So all these articles and stuff started coming out now. So it picked up a name, you know, still Bergenhout building. So they decided with all this advertising and stuff going on, let's fix it up and stock it, you know.
And stock it, they sure did. The shop is full of graffiti and interesting bits and pieces left by visitors over the years. But it is a welcome watering hole to those travelling in the heat of the small Karoo. We eventually arrived in Oudtshoorn, the world's feather capital and a town synonymous with ostriches. We set up camp in the tranquil surroundings of the Kango Mountain Resort. Now this is what I call living it up, listening to the rustling of the trees and the sound of the flowing stream, away from the stress of the city. This is food for the soul. It's absolutely wonderful. And as the afternoon drifted into evening, the hustle and bustle of the city soon became a distant memory.
That's a big potted sauce.
At the Kango Wildlife Ranch, we experienced a fascinating tour with multilingual guides who, as we ventured through the crocodile enclosures, told us a great deal about these fascinating creatures that seem to survive the prehistoric era. At the Cheetah Land section of the park, we caught a bird's eye view of some of the world's endangered big cats in their natural enclosures. Amongst the endangered are the cheetahs and the rare white Bengal tigers. From Kango Wildlife Ranch, we moved on to the Kango Caves, one of the world's greatest natural wonders, where the mysterious and breathtaking limestone formations have been naturally sculptured through the ages. We left Oudtshoorn for Knysna via the Outeniqua Pass. In Knysna, we set up camp at Lake Brenton, where we were greeted by some friendly ducks. Lake Brenton is situated on the southern shores of the Knysna Lagoon, and from all along the waterfront of the lagoon, one has a great view of the lake and its distant shores. It's raining in Knysna today, so sightseeing is definitely out of the question. So we've decided to take a trip to George on the Outeniqua Choo-Choo. We're going to ride the choo-choo. The Outeniqua Choo-Choo is a steam-hauled train operating between Knysna and George in the heart of the Garden Route, offering its passengers a scenic 67-kilometer journey, experiencing the Garden Route not possible through any other means of transport.
Goeiemôre, kan ons al die kaartjies kry? All tickets please. Thank you. 5 and 3.
All along the route, the people lined up to greet the train and its passengers as it passed through some of South Africa's most beautiful countryside. In George, the train stopped at the Outeniqua Transport Museum, where we saw a variety of different modes of transport of a bygone era. Some would have made John Travolta in Grease very proud, whilst others were fit for royalty. Of course, we did make sure that there was time for coffee before catching the train back to Knysna. Back in Knysna, the weather was still not up to much. We decided to take in as much sightseeing as possible in any case. Our first stop was the waterfront with its many interesting shops selling out of the usual goods, gifts and novelties. Rolly and Bev even invested in a temporary tattoo. After spending a few hours at the waterfront, we drove up to the Heads where we enjoyed lunch at the restaurant at the mouth of the lagoon. Then we drove up to the top of the Heads where the views were breathtaking. By now the weather had still not improved, so we decided to call it a day. The next day we left Knysna for Storms River, avoiding the main highway and taking the scenic route over the Grootrivier and Blouberg passes. We arrived at the Tsitsikamma National Park late that afternoon. Fortunately, by now the weather had cleared up and the late afternoon setting from our campsite was like soothing music to our weary bones. The park offers a variety of forest and coastal walking trails with different levels of difficulty. I was conned into doing the short leg of the famous Otter Trail, which was certainly no easy task. Although the walk was on the heavy side, the result at the end of the trail made it all worthwhile. The pool at the foot of the waterfall beckoned the weary walkers to indulge in its cool, refreshing water. As if one walking trail for the day wasn't enough, I punished myself once again on a shorter trail, this time to the Sway Bridge across the mouth of the Storms River. Once again, the views along the trail made it all worthwhile. Like all good things, our holiday was coming to an end, and as a group we would spend our last night together, reliving our holiday around the campfire. The next morning we said our goodbyes to the Herter and Perrell families who had to return home because of work commitment. Wilma and I decided to take an extra few days leave to visit Molly and Nikki, Wilma's sister and brother-in-law, who own a bed and breakfast in Jeffreys Bay. Now check out the artwork in Molly and Nikki's B&B. I'm led to believe that the artist took 6 months to complete it. Mention the name South Africa to a surfer anywhere in the world and he'll say Jeffreys Bay. Now Jeffreys Bay has been known to have some of the best waves in the world, and world-class surfers from all over the globe have come here for many years to surf. As Wilma and I both enjoy the bush, we decided to end off our holiday at Addo Elephant National Park near Port Elizabeth. Addo has a watering hole just off the main camp, similar to the one we experienced in Etosha. This allows you to get really close and personal with the world's biggest land mammal and other animals that come along. A drive through the park proved rather interesting. We saw various species of smaller game such as the tortoise, and Hartebeer has taken it easy in the midday heat, as well as a very protective female elephant and its very young calf. We also saw an entire herd of elephant heading down towards the Domkrag waterhole, where they seemed to quench their endless thirst. they rushed to get down to the water, one got kinda stuck, but after some perseverance manages to get itself back onto the bank and happily joins up with the herd. Back at camp, the sun was just beginning to set. Wilma prepared us a fine, traditionally South African meal, which was our last before returning home.
Wilma, thanks. This is better than 5-star.